Gary Hamilton was born on February 16, 1941, in Huntington, Pennsylvania. He is a veteran of the Vietnam War. Since leaving the Army, he moved to Myerstown, Pennsylvania, where he raised his family with his wife, Betty Hamilton. The two were married for 45 years until Betty passed away.
Mr. Hamilton was raised on a farm in Huntington, Pennsylvania. He attended school in a one-room country schoolhouse until he dropped out to join the Army at age 17.
Grew up on a farm, team of horses. Went to school, started school in a one-room schoolhouse, a country school. Went to town, grew up there, went to elementary school and high school. Joined the Army when I was 17. Been going ever since.
It was his own choice to enlist, and he says he chose the Army because what it offered appealed to him. He originally chose the Army Ordnance during his first enlistment and joined the Transportation Aviation in his second. During these two enlistments, Mr. Hamilton traveled to many training facilities and also across the world to places like Germany and Vietnam.
A lot of his immediate family was in the Army. His father and many uncles were in the service, most of them in the Navy. A lot of his cousins were in the Korean War, and even some of them in the Vietnam War.
After enlisting, he moved through the ranks at a steady pace. By the time he came back from Vietnam, he ranked as an SP5E5, which is Specialist Second Class. He gained the highest rank in his years of Vietnam service while working with the Transportation Aviation.
Basic training took about 3 months. Mr. Hamilton completed this at Fort Dix, New Jersey. He described his training as cold, which was to be expected at the time he trained. Besides cold, he said that the officers were respectable, training was rigorous, and it put the men in the best physical shape.
Got our shot, got our first issue of clothing, got our hair cut down to nothing, and we're assigned to a barracks. And we learned how to make our bunks and how to clean. You were always scrubbing floors. You learned how to do dishes in the mess hall, and how to peel potatoes, and how to scrub garbage cans. And you learned how to march.
They could achieve. After completing basic training, he traveled to Everdeen Proving Grounds in Maryland before his final training stop at the Rocky Mountain Arsenal. He described his experience there as a more school-type environment. There, he learned to repair binoculars, telescopes, ballistic drives, and rangefinders. He stressed that all of this was done without a computer, contrary to popular belief. This training prepared him for the work he would do in Vietnam, repairing similar items that had been damaged in combat.
Mr. Hamilton trained to be in the Army Ordnance during his first enlistment. With this group, he was an instrument repairman who fixed telescopes, ballistic drives, and rangefinders on tanks. He was sent to Hanau, Germany in the 42nd Ordnance Company in July of 1959. While his main focus was working, of course, he also made friends with some of the men he worked with and attempted to keep in contact with his family.
He left Germany in February of 1961 and left for Vietnam on Christmas Day of 1962. Mr. Hamilton was an airframe structure repairman and worked mostly with helicopters. The only casualties he witnessed were injured soldiers on the aircraft that would stop at the base to refuel. He tells that he never got involved and let the medics take care of that. For a little fun on slow days, Mr. Hamilton and his comrades took an old scooter and turned it into a go-kart. When they weren't racing it down the highway, they went to the West Sioux Inn, a local club for enlisted NCO men. They even tried water skiing.
For the work, he was required to work on any aircraft that was given to him. His unit commander was well known for taking the men who fixed a certain aircraft out for a ride. Mr. Hamilton explained that this was his way of making sure they took their time and did it right.
Our unit commander up there's way of enforcing quality control was after you told him an aircraft was done, ready to fly, he'd go out and say, all right, who worked on this? Get in. We're going for a flight. It was his way of ensuring that you took your time and did it right. If you weren't afraid to fly in it, he wasn't afraid to fly it.
Once his enlistment was over, he flew from Vietnam to Japan, then to San Francisco, and then back to Pennsylvania. Just like the other veterans from Vietnam, he was called a baby killer. He said that he never shot anyone and that the Viet Congs were the real monsters. Mr. Hamilton said the Viet Congs lined up women and children in front of them, knowing Americans wouldn't shoot women and children.
As for his medals, Mr. Hamilton only received a paper detailing what his medals were after he was discharged. He received a Sharpshooter's Medal, Vietnam Service Medal with 1 Bronze Service Star, Republic of Vietnam Campaign Medal, and National Defense Service Medal, and Good Conduct Medal. His Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal was deleted. To receive his Sharpshooter's Medal, he had to shoot a certain score with an M1 rifle, which he trained with until he went to Vietnam.
When asked if he kept in touch with any of his war comrades, Mr. Hamilton explained that the people he associated with in the war were from all over the country. One man in basic training with him was even from Scotland.
He was working as a construction electrician in Myerstown, Pennsylvania when the Vietnam War officially ended. Mr. Hamilton said that the only part of civilian life that was difficult was adjusting to the dramatic change in temperature. He says that he learned to cherish the life you have because it could always be a lot worse. He explained how the only thing the Vietnamese people knew was war and conflict, and that it didn't faze them.
The life lessons he received during his service was to respect others. He thinks that one can't be in charge and learn to lead unless that person has actually learned to follow. Mr. Hamilton believes that even after college, there is still so much to learn. When asked if he would change anything about his service in the war, he says that he wouldn't change a thing and that everyone makes mistakes. But he did point out that he was glad that some people out there still cared about history and wanted to leave behind a record of a family tree for others.
To Mr. Hamilton and all of the veterans of the Vietnam War, we extend you the warm, inviting welcome home that you are due. We greatly appreciate your service and sacrifice you gave to protect our country. Mr. Hamilton, thank you for letting us record your story and for your service to our country.